Hongo,
Well, good morning, good afternoon.
or good afternoon. Yes,
It
right.
is good afternoon.
Got it for me. Anyway, I'd just like to welcome everyone here to our leap year, February 29th Fellowship Assembly. And I'm going to beg, oh, hi, Kim. Hi, Kit.
Good morning.
Kit, were your ears burning?
Oh, always.
We were, Jerry and I were talking about you.
We were just talking of you, yeah.
He keeps saying your basement's always available. So anyway.
That's right. We call it the garden level.
Well, it's the best B&B I've ever been to.
Anyway, this is a good welcome. I'm coughing away here. I'm choking on my lunch. I'm going to apologize if my phone rings beforehand because, as we mentioned to Tammy earlier, everyone and their dog decides to wait until February 29th to make their RSP contribution. So anyway, and the phone's been ringing here. So welcome everyone. And it's actually, hi Patrick, Judy.
Hi.
And actually, Tammy, do you want me to do the Paul Harris presentation now?
Yeah, let's do that first.
All right. So we have a Paul Harris Fellowship certificate in pin, and I would love to present this in person at some point in time, but we'll see. Anyway, the presentation of a Paul Harris Fellow recognition is the Rotary Foundation's way of expressing its appreciation for substantial contribution to its humanitarian educational programs. It's named for the Rotary's founder, a Chicago lawyer, who started our organization with 3 business associates in 1905. A world of peace and goodwill comes closer to reality today as Hongo becomes a Paul Harris Fellow. Now, Hongo's gift of $1,000 US to the Rotary Foundation's educational humanitarian programs is a commitment to peace and to a better life for people of our world. It is because of such gifts as this that the Rotary Foundation can carry out an array of programs that achieve beneficial changes in our world, improve living conditions, increase food production, better education, wider availability of treatment and rehabilitation for the sick and disabled, new channels for the flow of international understanding, and brighter hopes for peace. In becoming a Paul Harris Fellow, Hongo joins a remarkable company of persons throughout the world. They are recognized for their devotion to the ideal of goodwill, peace, and understanding, a goal of Rotarians the world over, and one that Hongo clearly shares. It gives me great pleasure, Hongo, to present you with the emblems of appreciation given to a Paul Harris Fellow. I have a certificate and we have a pin, and we congratulate you and we thank you for your commitment to the programs of the Rotary Foundation. And Paul Harris said, "He who tries to find the good in others will be rewarded, for others will surely find the good in him. All of the earth's sad and lonesome creatures, the most helpless is he who loves not his fellow man." So please join me in recognizing our newest Paul Harris Fellow in our club, Fellow Hongo. And I wish I could present this to you in person sometime. So
Well, you will have the time, probably at the convention in Calgary.
Good.
Yes.
Oh, yes. All right. So we do have, so I mean, I could mail it. Tammy, we could mail the certificate and pin off, but shall we wait until 2025?
Yeah, let's wait. I
Oh,
can
yeah,
send them copies of it. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay.
It's
Well,
up,
thank
it's
you
up to
very
you.
much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in the foundation. So anyway, Hongo, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All
You're
right.
welcome.
All right. Well, it's great to see some new faces this morning. Let's welcome our guest, our DG Brent from Edmonton. And we have Jerry Darachuk with us from Medicine Hat. You've probably all seen the article I had in a
No,
recent
not Medicine
bulletin.
Hat?
No,
Yes.
I'm from Calgary North Rotary Club.
Oh, no, but I meant, what I meant to say is you're friends with Dieter and Kit,
Oh,
who
yeah.
are in Medicine Hat, yes. But you do live in Calgary, I did know that.
Yeah.
Thank you. And also we have Dieter with us this morning. He's a faithful guest of ours for some strange reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's my pleasure to introduce Conrad this morning. He joined our club in January of 2023 from Toronto. He is a first-time Rotarian. He's learning lots about it. He faithfully attends the weekly meetings that online. So we're very excited this morning he's going to start off doing his classification talk, and then he'll move into a presentation in a field that he's extremely knowledgeable and interested in. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Conrad. If everybody would like to mute themselves, please.
Guess I should unmute myself. How do I just choose share screen to share my screen? Okay. I don't use this interface a lot, so I'll do a slideshow from the beginning. There we go. This is me. I hope you find it entertaining. The whole load part is something that came about last year. It kind of took me by surprise. It turns out to have a lot more obligations than it does any kind of benefits, but there you go. So I am an author. I actually have 2 international bestsellers, and I have 7 books published, 9 books written. Veteran in the Canadian Armed Forces, carpenter, welder, father, and mentor in business marketing. But I'm inclined to believe that any parent has to be a mentor. You're teaching your kids how to be adults, which is kind of different from how I grew up. I accomplished a fair bit in the first half of my life. I'm currently 57. By 28, I'd achieved some things, had been a veteran, became a father. And you can see at the bottom, actually September 23rd, 1994, 1:13 p.m., according to the accident report, I wrapped a car around a tree at 84 kilometers an hour. And in the process of getting me out of the car, I ceased to have any vital signs. That's what VSA means, vital signs absent. They were absent for several minutes. When they got me in the ambulance, they discovered I was back, and off we went. 10 and a half hours worth of surgery later, I came out of surgery, and 28 years later, hello, I'm feeling much better now. Also, by the time I was 28, I had 32 suicide attempts, several of which came very close to succeeding. Cost me several days in the hospital. Interestingly, at no point in my life was there any sort of psychiatric commitment or anything else. And primarily because my parents considered it a tremendous embarrassment that one of their children would attempt suicide. And in fact, my sister, who is 6 years older than me, had also attempted suicide several times. And my parents just found it incredibly embarrassing that their children would do this to them. And I can tell you what turned my life around was that car crash. It was not an accident. It was an exercise in utter stupidity. I was actually traveling home to say goodbye to my parents because I was headed to Yugoslavia as a dismounted infantryman with the Dragoons, and I had no intention of coming back. And goofed, was driving a road that I had driven going to high school, was convinced I knew the road really well, and obviously didn't really know it as well as I thought I did. So I was doing 84 kilometers an hour going into a hairpin turn. So life turned around. That was a decidedly interesting experience. And since that time, I managed to work my way up to, and I'm extremely proud of this, being a field engineer without ever holding a degree. Never been to university. I ran my own residential renovations business. You can read the list that's there. Created a couple of podcasts. I currently have a YouTube channel. I really like the motto of cranium ex rectum. It's a litmus test for me. If I say it to someone and they laugh, I know they get the joke and that we're going to get along. If I say it to someone and they cringe, I know they need a really healthy dose. These are some of the books that I've written. These are obviously the international bestsellers. The writing ebooks one was actually the very first book I wrote. So I was pleased, completely oblivious originally, when it sold a bunch of copies. It sold over 30,000 copies. And I just like, wow, great, royalty checks. I didn't even know what a bestseller was until the editor and publisher, Bob Bly, filled me in. These are the other marketing books. I can tell you that one on the left, the Amazon bestseller formula, is a case study in everything to do wrong. Just everything. Where the first book sold like massively, I think this book sold about 7 copies. So I've been on both ends of that success spectrum. It's writing books is fun, but wow, it's the easy part. Selling them is the hard part. This is a series I'm working on. It's actually inspired by Jack Canfield, and Jack wrote the foreword to the first book in this series, Getting Happy When You Wish You Were Dead. So I was really thrilled, one, to be inspired by Jack, and then when he agreed to write the foreword, I danced around my apartment for about an hour going, yay! So that one's published, and then the way this series works is there are guides that go with it. So the one that's front and center, Getting Happy When You're Trapped with the People You Love, is a guide. It's written, waiting to be published because I want to polish it a little. And then there's a guide that goes with the When You Wish You Were Dead book that actually needs more work before it's published. Oh, and this is where I'm headed. And some great news on this. So last year, in the first half of the year, I did a bunch of presentations to Rotary clubs about suicide and social media and the very negative direction we're headed. And then I got some questions, and I ended up doing a bunch of videos at the end of last year around getting value from self-help. And in the process, it gave me the idea that maybe the way to spread the message is by working with local charities that are trying to help people stand on their own, build a successful life. And so what I'm doing is using Rotary clubs as the initial screen. If a charity is supported by a Rotary club, then I know that they're actually doing something, they're actually involved, and there's some alignment between the 7 areas of Rotary service and the charity. It's a good first screen. So this week, I connected like full throttle with Rework Richmond, which is in Richmond, Virginia. Yes, Richmond, Virginia. And they are an ideal charity. So the Charlotte Recyclery, I've also connected with them. They're great, but Rework does exactly the kind of work that I want to fit in with. And we started talking this week, and wish me luck that we have a fit and we can start building things together. And I think that's it is last slide. So I will stop sharing and shut up. That's me.
I wouldn't, don't shut up, Conrad, my goodness. Is there any questions?
Yeah. I need to know more about the Lord part. I mean, I know the Lord, but the you Lord part.
Yeah. It's kind of nothing. All it means, it puts you in the class of landed gentry in England, which means diddly squat. It's not like somebody comes to me with anything. It just opens some doors for future recognition through the crown. The way it was explained to me, so I also happen to be an ordained minister, a pastor, and there's no requirement whatsoever for me to like do anything with that. It turns out when you get this thing, you have to use it. Like even a doctor who goes to 10 years of medical school does not have to run around saying, "Oh, I'm Dr. Conrad." They don't have to. The way it was explained to me is that it's some sort of obligation that I include this. So I don't know any better. I don't know any different. So, okay, I'll include it. But it just, wow. So far, it's like having, I don't know, like having Einstein hair. It's something people go, "Whoa, what's that?" And then hopefully they just kind of forget it.
That's great.
So I have a Rotary question for you. I know Nancy, one of our former members, sponsored you to come into the club. So what
Yes.
attracted you to Rotary and why RECCO?
Actually, when I published the Business Owner's Guide to Social Media in 2010, I went to Rotary because my only understanding is that you guys are all business owners or managers. And so I toured around, I don't know, a couple hundred Rotary clubs anyway, talking about social media and, here's how a business owner can use it. And actually giving people a huge sigh of relief saying social media actually is a big waste of time. And if you fail to have your traditional marketing in place, then you really shouldn't waste your time with social media. That was my opinion in 2010. It happens to still be my opinion today. But I forget what got me looking. I think it was the Getting Happy series that I wanted to work on it. And when I was traveling around Rotary clubs, they were all saying, "Oh, you should, join, be part of our club." And my answer was, "Well, I'm always traveling and speaking, so I can't." And I don't know if it's still the same today, but then you had to like attend at least half of the meetings or something like that. Well, I wasn't in any one location that much. Yeah, except home. So, I couldn't. Apparently, Rotary E-clubs were just starting in 2010. It was something new. Nobody knew about it, so obviously nobody told me about it. And then when I started talking to clubs here in Toronto, somebody mentioned something about there being an E-club. And I found RECCO. Actually, I think it was Etobicoke West. I think it was the folks there that told me about Rotary E-Club Canada 1 and how you could do every meeting every week because it's on the internet. And since I want to go back to traveling and speaking, I thought, I found my people. And so far, I think I actually have 100% attendance.
You certainly do. And I remember you telling me,
Me, Conrad.
yeah, I remember you telling me that you carry around the four-way test in your wallet. Is that right?
I do actually and I'm just reaching forward to get it. When I was traveling around, it's kind of beat up. I don't know if you guys will be able to see this.
Yeah.
So on that side, it's the four-way test. And then on the back, it's the object of Rotary.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember who. I don't remember which club I was at, but somebody gave me this. And it really, because of the life I've lived, especially the first thing, is it the truth?
Yeah.
My parents never told the truth unless they absolutely had to. They saw no benefit in it. And so that hugely resonated with me. And I think in general, we could do a lot better today if all of us would just ask ourselves before we open our mouth, is what I'm saying actually true?
Mhm.
And even if your answer is, I don't know, you know what? Call me whatever you want. I think you should keep your mouth shut. If you don't know it's true, then don't spread it. Go and check first. That's what public libraries are for. I love libraries. Okay, that's my soapbox moment.
Brent has a question. Go ahead.
Hi, Conrad. I just wanted to let the club know that Conrad and I have had some dialogue back and forth after my first meeting with you.
Yes.
And for most of you, I think on the call know that our international president this year, Gord McAnally, has asked us to focus on the stigma of breaking down that stigma of mental health and mental illness. So at our district conference in Edmonton in May, we're actually having a whole session focused just on the stigma. We've got Michael Landsberg from Toronto coming to speak on his lived experience of going through severe depression and suicidal attempts. And then we're following that up with a panel of mental health experts to talk about what we can do as Rotarians to help break down the stigma. You alluded to it a lot, the embarrassment. How could someone do this to me as a parent, as a family member, instead of understanding the root cause and the issue? So just wanted to share that with the club and thank Conrad. He and I shared some great conversations, and we're really looking forward to shining a brighter light on that issue of the stigma of mental health and mental illness. So thanks, Conrad.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any more questions on Conrad's classification before he moves into the next phase?
Speaker.
Thank you.
Yep. It's yours again, Conrad.
Okay. And this is about social media and suicide. So I'll make sure I pick the right screen. So this really caught my attention. Actually, when COVID started, there was, I forget what the name of it is, Wuhan, Shuhan, something or other, whatever the first city in China was that went into lockdown over COVID. When they came out of that lockdown, it was only about 80 days, 83 days. And when they came out, marriages went up by 300%. Yay! And divorces went up by 3,000%. And it showed, wow, people kind of really are making bad choices. And because it tied in with the Getting Happy series, obviously it ties in with my life and my experience, I started doing some research. And it turns out since 1999, and these are American numbers, and American numbers are the lowest numbers. I'll get back to that in a second, but those are the lowest numbers. Since 1999, there's been a 300% suicide spike across all age groups in the United States, with one exception. Young women aged 12 to 15. Back up. They've gone up by 30%. It's young women that have gone up by 300% in that same time period. And it has to do with young women trying to find validation through social media instead of through their families. Not their friends, not their schoolmates, through their families. So there's some stuff that I've already covered in the classification. Won't cover that too much. Here's a little bit of history about social media, because it's older than we think it is. We tend to think of Facebook as the start of social media, whereas 6 Degrees, if we are all old enough, we all know who Kevin Bacon is. And his idea of 6 degrees of separation, that's what 6 degrees was about. And then along comes Hot or Not, which was actually the first iteration of what would eventually become Facebook. That wasn't done by Zuckerberg. It wasn't done by the twins. It was done by somebody else. And it was basically a site where you would swipe left or right kind of thing. It was actually click on a check mark or click on an X to say whether somebody was hot or not. And I think we can all recognize that that kind of set the tone for what the internet is today, especially what social media is today. It's all about, do I like it or do I not like it? And whether it's YouTube or it's Facebook, library thing, any of the thousands of social media sites that are in existence today, they all run an algorithm designed to feed you content that you like. And this is why social media becomes an echo chamber. It only shows you the stuff that you like. You have to make a deliberate effort to get outside of your comfort zone and see things that might upset you, that you might disagree with, that might actually engage you in healthy conversation and debate. And, oh, I got the ages wrong. It's 10 to 14, not 12 to 15. I'm actually thinking of the story that I'm going to tell you, and her story occurred from the ages of 12 to 15. So here's what's going on with kids in general. We all know around 12 years of age is when we start to become adults. And if you look at any city, government, provincial website, it'll tell you that a young adult is from 12 to 13 years of age up to 29 years of age.
Mhm.
And I get excited by this stuff, not in a good way. I get upset by this kind of stuff because I see parents expecting young adults to be adults. I see parents expecting their children, 3, 4 years of age, to know whether they want a cheeseburger or a hamburger. And forgetting mom, dad, and I'm speaking as somebody who has raised 4 kids. One was my daughter, and the other are 3 children when I married the second time, and the woman I married was a widow, and there were 3 kids there. It's your job as the parent to teach your children. And as a carpenter, as a welder, I've had a lot of apprentices. And you cannot just assume that they know what they're doing. And when it comes to especially welding, you make that assumption and someone can end up electrocuting themselves. So you don't assume. And yet so many of us, so many parents go one of 2 routes. They assume that their kid knows because they know. Okay, it doesn't work that way. Or they just do things for their kid because it's so much easier. And I agree, it is. It's far easier. But that is not fulfilling your role as a mentor to your child. And then we introduce this thing called the internet, which is actually way more than social media. I use the internet all the time. And there are lots of research portals that I access, but social media is the thing that gets attention. And the thing about the internet is that it brings lots of information. It brings lots of education. You can know a lot of things by accessing the internet. But it doesn't do anything to build experience. You can read a video about how to frame a house, but the only way you're going to learn to do it is by cutting the wood and hammering the nails. You can learn all kinds of things about how to interact with people. But the only way you're going to learn how to interact with people is by doing it. And so what I'll do is I'll jump into the story. And this story was actually in the news recently because of the online harms bill that is in front of Parliament right now. And I'll tell you right off the top, that online harms bill is a mistake. It's positioned the wrong way. There's good stuff in it, but it's a mistake. And this story is Amanda Todd's story. Amanda Todd got involved with social media at 12 years of age. And she had the misfortune of encountering a predator who badgered her and cajoled her and teased her into showing her breasts. Because at 12 years of age, Amanda was well developed. Took a year, but after a year, she gave in and showed her breasts. The predator immediately recorded everything, used photos, and then started exploiting her. Sending her messages saying, here's what I want you to do, and if you fail to do it, then I will send these pictures to your classmates, to your parents, to everybody you know. As you can imagine, Amanda was in a bad way. And she's 12, 13, 14. And by the time she was 15, she took her own life. She hanged herself. And the first thing people turn to is, well, where were the parents in all of this? The parents were involved. But they were also, in the most important places, completely absent. So in 3 years, Amanda ended up going to 4 different high schools. And her parents moved twice. So the first time they moved, they stayed in the same town. They just kind of moved to the other side of town. The second time they moved to a completely different town. And they had Amanda move from high school to high school. They got Amanda counseling, sent her to psychiatrists. They got her on medication. So it sounds like her parents were doing everything they could to support Amanda. But you know what? In 3 years, they never told Amanda, sweetheart, you are clearly making bad choices. And one of the things that's motivating you to make these bad choices is the influence you're getting from social media. So you are going to stop using social media. That's the parent's job. And to say back to me, well, my 13-year-old won't listen. Okay. Now we need to back up to when that 13-year-old was 2 or 3, and you were still not the world's best parent because you didn't parent. But I can tell you that a 13-year-old doesn't have the money to pay for a cell phone plan. A 13-year-old doesn't have the money to buy a laptop and pay for internet. There are lots of parental controls you can put in place. And the most important one, and this is one that I lived out time and time again with our kids when I was married the second time. The conversation is around, oh, I hate what you're doing. Okay. So here's the key. Sweetheart, we love you. We want what is best for you. And your mother and I, we're both in our 40s at that point. We've been on this earth roughly 4 times longer than you have. Can you see how we can see what you're doing and where it's going to lead when you've never been there? You have no clue where it's going to lead. Do you get that? And it's important that you get them to agree. They need to recognize that reality. And the next thing is, sweetheart, and we had 2 girls and a boy. And we told all 3 of them in separate conversations repeatedly. There are times when we are going to make decisions that you will not like, that you're going to think, we're wrong. And that's okay. You can think that. You can't disobey us, but you can think we're wrong. Because if you understand defensive driving, everybody knows the rules on the road. And so everybody understands defensive driving and how to avoid accidents and be a good driver. But when you're out in the world, there are no rules. People will cheat. They will lie. They will misrepresent themselves. And our job as parents is to do what we think is necessary to keep you safe. So we're making choices that are in your best interest because we love you. And always go back to that. You cannot suppose that your children know you love them. They need to hear it. Now, I agree absolutely. And our marriage came apart because of this issue between my wife and I. Your actions need to show that you love somebody. So you need to spend time with them. You need to invest energy and effort into what they care about. In Amanda's case, her parents handed it over to psychiatrists. Her parents handed it out to somebody else. Her parents called the police and said, there's this guy on the internet who's doing this to our daughter. And this is where the online harms bill comes in. Carol Todd was recently on the news saying, we need this. We need these locks in place. She actually used the phrase locked doors. Well, as a carpenter, I can tell you that locks are only meant to keep honest people out. A lock will not stop a criminal. So the online harms bill, Carol Todd says, this would have saved my daughter. My answer is, no, it wouldn't. You needed to save your daughter. And that's a brutal message to give to a parent who has lost a child. But from my perspective, by the time I was 28, I tried 32 times to end my life. I had parents that were abominable. I was the result of an abortion compromise. I was allowed to live so that my father could vent his life's frustrations on me. And after I was born, my mother had at least 2 abortions. She had enough abortions that she eventually had to have a hysterectomy. And I saw what those things did to her. And I saw what their attitudes did to me. And I have no difficulty standing in front of a parent saying, you need to be focused on showing your child how to connect and how to be effective. Because when somebody feels disconnected, and out of a child's mouth, that sounds like, nobody loves me. Nobody even cares. I could disappear and no one would even notice. You need to show them how to be effective. Because out of a child's mouth, that's, I can't do anything right. Everything I touch breaks. I'm no good. If your child is saying these things, then suicide becomes an option. Because suicide is not a virus. It isn't a bacteria. It isn't a disease that you catch. It's an idea. And all you have to do is look at ideas throughout history and how difficult it is to get an idea out of your head once it's there. So if we focus on showing our children how to connect, how to be effective. Our youngest daughter was incredibly upset that her sister and her brother were allowed to use the riding lawnmower. Why can't I? Why can't I? Mom was, you're the baby. You're too young. We can't do that. And yet her brother and sister had learned to use the lawnmower at a younger age than she was when I taught her how to use it. And I connected with her and I showed her how to be effective in that one thing by waiting Another reason why our marriage came apart, waiting until mom wasn't home. And then taking her out on the lawnmower and literally walking beside her while she's running that lawnmower. And then showing her how to run the blades, and then showing her how to, and we were out there for about 2 hours. And we never really got very much of the lawn cut, but she learned how to use that tractor. And when she got off it, she just blew me away because she was crowing. She was absolutely thrilled. I'm as good as my brother and sister now. That's what she saw. Because she wasn't being allowed to use that piece of equipment, she wasn't as good as her brother and sister. So we need to invest in our children. We need to show them when they're 18 months to 2 years of age, you need to force them to use their words. Because if that window closes by the time they're 30 months of age, they're autistic. That's how they get labeled. Because when that window closes, the ability to develop language is now, at best, severely retarded. And at worst, it's gone. And so all the way along, and what I see from parents is, my kids are an inconvenience. I do these things because it's easier and it's faster and I can do these things. Okay, folks. And for all of us in this club, I think I'm a grandparent now. And I'm probably at the younger age in this club at 57. As grandparents, you're still parents. Your kids are still your kids. They still need your help. They still need your support. They need your advice. They don't think they do, but they do. And the only way you're going to get them to listen is by loving them. And your grandkids need you too. They need you to invest the time and energy to help them learn all the way through until they're 25, 28, 29. And as anachronistic as it is, Rotary used to have a thing in place where you had to be 30 years of age to join Rotary. Because at 30 years of age, you were a fully formed adult. And I completely agree with Rotary's approach now that when you're 18 and you're in Rotaract, you're a Rotarian. Cool, great. But that doesn't remove our need, our obligation to support our kids in becoming mature, responsible adults. And when it comes to social media, when it comes to mobile phones, one of the things to do is they don't need that stuff until they are at least 16 years of age. If they're at school and they need you, there's this wonderful device on the desk in the principal's office called a telephone that you can pick up and dial. And the school will let your kid use it. So let's stop giving them incredibly powerful technology as a toy. And instead, let's give them ourselves. Let's give them us and make connections and show them how to be effective. This is part of a chart I use. And what I try to do is tell people, work at filling your life with PEP, personal empowerment practices. These are positive things. Understand that poop is out there, personal offensive obstructive practices. Also understand that while you are on PEP, you're filling their life with sunshine and rain and all the wonderful things they need to grow up to be wonderful adults. You still need to put poop in there. Gardens don't grow without fertilizer. So, do you want to be changeable with your kids? No. That's a bad one. That's like putting horse manure on a vegetable garden. It's going to kill it. But blame, that's a good one. You're throwing the ball in the house, you broke a lamp. Okay, that's blame versus blaming, which is, why did you have to do that? Why can't you just do what I told you to do? Okay, blaming is not useful. That's definitely over fertilizing. But holding kids accountable, so they have to know what the blame is. You did something you weren't supposed to do. It had consequences that you didn't want them to have. And now, how do we fix it? I could, and I have a clock right next to my screen, so I can see what time it is. I could still be talking 5 hours from now. These are a couple of things that I looked at recently. I actually just added this week. For those who don't know, Aaron Bushnell is an American airman. He's in the Air Force in the United States. And he immolated himself. He poured an accelerant over himself and set himself on fire. Interestingly, there's a New York Times piece out that talks about what he did that never accuses him of mental illness. And I'll say what is maybe the most challenging thing that you'll hear from me today. Being suicidal is not being mentally ill. Being suicidal is a response to the stimuli you have received. When your parents tell you you're worthless, and then they tell everybody else that they're loving parents, when your parents crap on you constantly, and then tell everybody that we love our child, we give our child everything, you know, food, roof over the head, food to eat, great. That results in suicidal ideology, suicidal ideation. It isn't a disease. It isn't even an illness. It's, wow, incredibly destructive. Absolutely. Incredibly bad. Yes. But deciding on suicide, thinking about suicide, is because you feel so disconnected, you feel so ineffective, that the only solution you can see is, I need to leave. And let's keep in mind, me. By the time I was 28, I had 32 suicide attempts, probably somewhere in the realm of 11 to 13 of them put me in the hospital for days. Mine wasn't just a cry for help. I was trying to check out. I'm now 57. I'm on the other side of that tunnel. I'm on the other side of that mountain. And I can tell you, just like any thought pattern, it's incredibly hard to leave behind because you take comfort in it. Very much like a warm, snuggly blanket. But you can leave it behind. You can get through to where, hey, I've written 9 books. I've helped, I don't know how many thousands of people just in this, completely aside from anything I've done in business. And now I'm starting to work with local charities that I connect to through Rotary. And I have no objection to telling you, I joined Rotary. I know it was in my head. Rotary does some great stuff. I know from when I was presenting before, there is no other organization in the world that gives more to post-secondary education than Rotary. Nobody. Now, there are governments that give more, but there's no private organization like Rotary. Rotary gives the most. And Shelter Box, you know, wow, I could go on for hours just about Shelter Box. I learned all about that in 2010. I actually took a Shelter Box with me to Rotary clubs when I was speaking, which, wow, it's amazing what they managed to fit into that box. And that's it. Probably not the smoothest ending to a presentation in the history of mankind.
Mhm.
But yeah. And
Fantastic. You're open
Okay,
for questions, Conrad?
Yes, I'm
Absolutely.
just going to stop the recording and we can keep chatting, okay?
Sure.